I was a weary truck driver, fighting through a relentless storm to meet an impossible deadline. Along the way, I stopped to help a family stranded on the side of the road, towing their car for free. That act got me written up and docked pay by my boss. 2 weeks later, I was summoned to the head office, fully expecting to be fired. But when I walked in, the man I had rescued during the storm was sitting there, and he had just bought the entire company. Before we hit the road, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? Don't forget to subscribe for our daily stories. Now, let's get back into that storm. Rain pounded down in sheets, forming a solid gray wall that my 18-wheeler's wipers barely managed to cut through. It was 2 a.m., somewhere along a desolate stretch of highway in rural Pennsylvania, and I was racing against the clock. My boss, Davis, a man as pleasant as black ice, had made the expectations clear when I left the depot. "This delivery is time-sensitive, Finn," he barked over the phone. "No excuses. I want that truck at the Chicago depot by 5 a.m., or don't bother showing up tomorrow." In long-haul trucking, that wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I was a skilled driver, among the best, but to Davis, I was just a number, a disposable asset. I pushed my rig as hard as I dared on the slick roads, eyes straining against the hypnotic rhythm of the wipers. My mind was a fog of fuel gauges, deadlines, and the gnawing anxiety of bills waiting at home. I was just trying to make it to the next sunrise. Then I saw them, a flicker of weak hazard lights, a quarter-mile ahead. As I got closer, it resolved into a dark SUV, hood up, completely dead in the water. Beside it stood a man, drenched, frantically waving for help. My first instinct, shaped by years of Davis's pressure, was to keep going. "Not your problem. You're late. You'll be fired." But as I moved to the left lane to pass, I saw the reason I couldn't ignore them. In the back seat was a woman, pressed against the glass, and a child no older than 5 or 6 in a car seat. A family stranded in the dead of night, in the worst storm of the year. With a groan at my own conscience, I hit the air brakes. My rig slowed, pulling over 100 feet ahead. I donned my rain gear and ran into the downpour. The man, now clearly in his 50s with a tired but kind face, shouted over the wind, "Our engine just died. No power at all. My phone has no signal." I told him to stay in the car with his family while I checked the vehicle. The engine was completely flooded. This wasn't a quick fix. They needed a tow, which wouldn't arrive for hours. "I can't leave you here," I said. "I'll tow you to the next town. There's a motel about 20 miles down the road." He shook his head. "You have a deadline," he protested. "Some deliveries," I replied, "are more important than others." The next 20 minutes were a blur of cold, wet, heavy work. Using my tow chains and his help, we secured the SUV and set off. My truck moved at a slow crawl, the dead weight of their vehicle dragging behind. We drove in silence, communicating only through occasional CB radio check-ins. By 4 a.m., we arrived at a small motel. After unhitching his car, the father, Warren, approached my cab, holding a wet, crumpled wallet. "I don't have much cash, but please, let me pay for your time, your fuel." I shook my head. "No, sir. Just get your family inside safe and warm. That's what matters." He looked at me long and sincerely, shook my hand firmly, and said, "I will not forget this." I watched them disappear into the motel, satisfaction warming me for a moment before I saw the clock. 4:15 a.m. I was over 200 miles from Chicago, my delivery due in 45 minutes. I was catastrophically late. The rest of the drive was lonely and tense. Dawn broke, painting the storm-swept sky pink and gray. I arrived at the Chicago depot just after 9 a.m., 4 hours late. Morning shift drivers looked at me with pity. I didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed, a text from Davis. 2 words, "My office." Davis's office was small, messy, joyless, smelling of stale coffee and frustration. He was a balding, flushed man whose mid-level management failures he redirected at his drivers. He didn't offer me a seat. "You set yours 6 hours late, Finn," he growled. The penalty clause was $5,000 per hour. My delay had cost $30,000. "Anything to say before I fire you and blacklist you?" I was tired, wet, bone-weary, but my conscience was clear. I told him the truth about the storm, the SUV, the family, the child, the lack of cell service, and the impossibility of waiting for a tow. There was a family in danger. I couldn't leave them, I said calmly. Davis stared, then barked a short, mirthless laugh. "A judgment call, huh? I don't set pay you to make judgment calls. I don't set pay you to be a hero. I don't set pay you to tow every car in distress. I pay you to deliver high-value cargo on time. That sets the beginning and end of your job description." He was right. By strict corporate standards, I had failed. But on a human level, I knew with absolute certainty that I had done the right thing, that truth was beyond his anger. I stood quietly, dignified, letting him vent, accepting whatever consequences came my way. But he didn't fire me. Instead, he did something worse, something humiliating. "You're not worth the paperwork of firing right now," he spat, full of contempt. "Here's what happens. The $30,000 late fee comes out of this depot's budget, which means it comes out of mine, so I'm taking it out of yours. 1 week suspension without pay. And this," he said, scribbling on a disciplinary form, "is a final written warning. One more mistake, one more unauthorized stop, one more missed deadline, and you're done." He shoved the form at me. "Now get out." I walked away with my dignity intact, but my wallet and future noticeably lighter. That week of suspension was quiet, stressful, and demoralizing. I spent it searching for other jobs, feeling the black mark of suspension weigh heavily. It seemed Davis had won. My single act of kindness had cost me everything. Then, on Friday, an email arrived from the corporate head office, from a name I didn't recognize, the CEO's executive assistant. It was brief, formal, and intimidating. A summons. I and Davis were to report to the CEO's office in New York City on Monday for a formal review of the incident. My heart pounded. 2 days to prepare for the end of my career, a bus ride across the country that felt like a march toward my execution. I stared out the window at the passing landscape, thinking of my career, the thousands of on-time deliveries, the years of honest work. All of it seemed about to vanish over one act of human decency. I wasn't angry, just tired. I had played the game and lost. I arrived at Freightline Logistics headquarters an hour early. The gleaming 50-story tower of glass and steel on Park Avenue was a world away from the diesel-fumed depots and highways I knew. I found Davis waiting in the marble-floored lobby, dressed in his best ill-fitting suit, nervous yet smug, like a petty tyrant about to be rewarded. "Well, Finn," he said, feigning sympathy, "looks like your little hero act finally caught up to you. A real shame." He leaned in conspiratorially. "When we go in there, say nothing. Let me handle it. I'll tell the CEO you made a judgment call. Maybe I can save you with a severance package instead of getting you blacklisted." He was pretending to help. A final weak power play. I nodded, too exhausted to argue. A moment later, a professional executive assistant opened the double doors. "Mr. Davis, Mr. Riley, they're ready for you." We walked in. The office was vast and imposing, overlooking Central Park. Behind a massive desk sat the CEO, a silver-haired man in his late 60s. In a large leather armchair to the side sat another man. My heart stopped. The world tilted. It was him, the man from the storm, not the desperate, soaked motorist I had helped, but dressed in a sharp, expensive suit, his face calm, his eyes intelligent and knowing. Mr. Warren. Davis, unaware of him, shot a dismissive glance, annoyed at the presence of a stranger. The CEO stood. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. We are here to review the late Apex Electronics delivery, but first, an introduction. Mr. Michael Warren, whose investment firm North Star Capital completed a majority acquisition of this company last month. He is now the owner and chairman of the board. I watched in shock as Davis's smug confidence collapsed. Every trace of pride vanished, replaced by horror, as he realized the stranded motorist he had mocked and punished had returned, now in a position of ultimate power. Mr. Warren spoke for the first time, his voice calm and sincere, meeting my eyes. "Finn," he said, a faint smile on his face, "I believe we have met. We have some business to discuss." Then his expression hardened as he turned to Davis. "But first, you owe my friend here an apology." I stood frozen, heart hammering. The man from the storm, now the company's owner, had called me his friend and demanded an apology from my boss. Davis, once confident and predatory, looked like a cornered animal. Blood drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "I am waiting, Mr. Davis," Warren said, his voice low and commanding. Finally trembling, Davis turned to me, his eyes, once full of contempt, now wide with panic. "Finn, I apologize," he stammered. "It was a misunderstanding. Company policy. I had no idea. I am so very sorry if I was harsh." It was the weak, insincere apology of a man terrified of the consequences, not genuinely remorseful. Mr. Warren didn't seem impressed. He looked at Davis with a calm, disappointed intensity. "Harsh, Mr. Davis?" he said, his voice like ice. "No, you weren't harsh. You were a petty tyrant, a small man drunk on a tiny amount of power, punishing a good man for an act of selfless compassion." He stood and walked deliberately to the window overlooking the city. "I've spent the past 2 weeks studying this company since acquiring it. I've reviewed the anonymous employee feedback, turnover rates, formal complaints buried quietly, and reports of your management style. You've created a culture of fear, Mr. Davis, a culture that values deadlines over decency, where a driver might leave a family stranded in a storm for a shipping contract. That is not efficiency. That is moral bankruptcy." He returned to the desk and looked at the former CEO, who nodded grimly. "That is not how this company will be run. And you," he said to Davis, "are no longer a part of it. Your employment with Freightline Logistics is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building." Davis collapsed into a chair, defeated, as 2 security guards entered. Turning to me, Warren Sepp's expression softened. "Finn," he said, a small smile on his face, "I seem to have a problem. The Chicago depot, one of our key hubs, no longer has a manager." I stared, unable to process the sudden change in my world. "I need someone to run it," he continued. "Someone who understands our most important assets are not trucks or contracts, but the decent, hard-working people who drive for us. Someone who knows when to follow policy and when it's right to break it. I need someone with character, someone like you. The job of Regional Operations Manager for the Chicago Depot is yours if you want it." I was speechless. Just an hour ago, I had been certain I'd be fired and blacklisted. "Sir, Mr. Warren," I stammered. Just a driver. I don't set no management. I don't have a degree." He held up a hand, smiling genuinely. "You know how to treat people with respect. You can make tough calls under pressure. You know when human life comes before profit. That cannot be taught. Everything else, I will teach you myself. Training starts Monday." In that moment, my life changed completely. From a broke, soon-to-be unemployed truck driver, I became a regional operations manager with one of the most powerful and principled men in the industry as my mentor. What had been the worst day of my career had become the first day of a new life. I left the Park Avenue Tower untethered from my old life. My old boss was gone. The former CEO shook my hand with respect, and Mr. Warren clapped me on the shoulder. "See you in Chicago on Monday. We have a company to rebuild." The bus ride back was surreal. I no longer stared at an uncertain future, but at a landscape I now felt invested in. I held the new business card in my hand. Finn Riley, Regional Operations Manager. It didn't feel real. Monday morning at the Chicago Depot, the atmosphere was tense. Word of Davis's sudden firing had spread. The drivers looked at me with awe and suspicion. They didn't know the full story. My first act as manager was to walk onto the depot floor, gather all the staff, and tell them the truth about the storm, the stranded family, the punishment, and the new owner who valued kindness above all. "The old way is over," I told them. "This depot will no longer run on fear and impossible deadlines. We will run on respect. We are a team, and we look out for each other." Change didn't happen overnight, but slowly, we built something new. I managed from the floor, working alongside drivers and mechanics. I renegotiated deadlines, instituted safety and maintenance-based bonuses, and introduced the Good Samaritan rule: drivers delayed while helping someone in distress on the road would be rewarded, not punished. The transformation was remarkable. Turnover dropped, safety improved, and profits soared. Mr. Warren visited monthly, mentoring me personally, and we developed a strong professional and personal bond. He taught me leadership. I taught him the realities of those who run the company on the ground. A year later, I sit in my bright, clean office overlooking the depot. It's a place of pride, not fear. My family has a secure, hopeful future. On my desk, a framed photo, the SUV safely parked beside my rig outside the motel that night. Under a plaque reading, "Character is who you are when you think no one is watching. Thank you for being a man of character, Finn." I had been a tired truck driver who chose human decency over career. I had no idea that choice would save me, reshape my life, and allow me to deliver a far greater cargo: hope, respect, and human kindness. A powerful story of how one act of kindness can spark a revolution. What do you think of the Good Samaritan rule Finn implemented? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were inspired, hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more stories of karma, justice, and character. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.